Okay, let's try this again. Welcome to Civilization Jihad Awareness, the show where truth wins every time. Wow. So I'm going to ask you to pray for Cinnamon Stillwell and her husband. He's apparently sick and definitely in need of your prayers. And with what his wife is doing, you need to keep him in your prayers. And that is all important today. Because she's not going to be joining us, unfortunately, because she needs to take care of her husband, and that's the good thing. I'm going to ask also that you pay just attention for a little bit, because I want to talk about where the term civilization jihad comes from before I continue. That term comes from a document written in 1991. It's called the Explanatory Memorandum of the Muslim Brotherhood of North America. This document was used in the 2007 trial of the 2007 and 2008 trial of the United States versus Holy Land Foundation. One paragraph is all important, and I'm just going to read that one paragraph. Understanding the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny, except for those who choose to slack, but would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? Basically, this is the Muslim Brotherhood taking a lesson from Sun Tzu, who said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So they have learned that, yes, let's try and subdue the enemy and see how, if we can fool them and make them believe things and other, change things so they slowly, so they don't understand they're being taken over. That is the goal. Now, we have a numerous amount of news stories out there, and I usually go by country, and there's a huge amount of stories for the United States on civilization, jihad, and terrorism this week. Let's start today with Sam Westrup's article out of the National Review. Sam Westrup is one of the best writers on the topic of civilization, jihad, and terrorism. He works for the Middle East Forum and also writes for National Review. This article is from National Review and is also appearing in the Middle East Forum. So if you get a chance, send Sam Westrup your kudos and thank yous for writing this article, because basically it's evidence against treason. The treason of Obama, this past president, Barack Obama. This is shocking. I'm familiar with some of the stuff here, but this is shocking. And this is, again, the work, the Middle East Forum that we're crediting here. This is the title. Exclusive. Obama administration knowingly funded a designated al-Qaeda affiliate. The group had been on a list of terrorist funders for a decade when a government agency specifically approved funding for it. The Middle East Forum has discovered that the Obama administration approved a grant of $200,000 of taxpayer dollars to an al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan, a decade after the U.S. Treasury designated it as a terror financing organization. More stunningly, government officials specifically authorized the release of at least $115,000 of this grant, even after learning that it was a designated terror organization. The story began in October 2004, when the U.S. Treasury Department Office of Foreign Assets Control designated the Khartoum-based Islamic Relief Agency, also known as ISRA, and as the Islamic African Relief Agency, as a terror financing organization. It did so because ISRA is linked to Osama bin Laden and his organization Maktab al-Qidmat, MK, the precursor of Al-Qaeda. According to the U.S. Treasury, in 1997, ISRA established formal cooperation with MK. By 2000, ISRA had raised $5 million for bin Laden's group. The Treasury Department notes that ISRA officials even thought to help relocate bin Laden to secure safe harbor for him. It further reports that ISRA raised funds in 2003 in Western Europe, specifically earmarked for Hamas suicide bombings. The 2004 designation included all of ISRA's branches, including a U.S. office called the Islamic American Relief Agency. Eventually, it became known as this American branch had illegally transferred over $1.2 million to Iraqi insurgents and other terror groups, including reportedly the Afghan terrorist Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. In 2010, the executive director of IARA USA, a board member, pled guilty to money laundering, theft of public funds, conspiracy, and several other charges. ISRA's influence also spread to Washington. Former U.S. Congressman Mark Siljander, a Republican from Michigan, in 2010 to obstruction of justice and acting as an unregistered foreign agent after prosecutors found that IARA USA had paid him $75,000 using misappropriated USAID grant money to lobby the government in an attempt to remove the charity from the government's terror list. Despite this well-documented history, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, in July 2014 awarded $405 to World Vision Incorporated, an international evangelical charity, to improve water, sanitation, hygiene, and to increase food security in Sudan's Blue Nile state. Of these funds, $200,000 was to be directed to a subgrantee, ISRA. Responding to the Middle East Forum's inquiry, a USAID official explains that World Vision had altered it in November 2014 to the likelihood of ISRA being on the terror list. USAID instructed World Vision to suspend all activities with ISRA and informed the State Department, OFAC, and USAID's Office of the Inspector General. USAID and World Vision then waited for OFAC to confirm whether the ISRA was designated or not. USAID emails obtained by the Middle East Forum reveal that in January 2015, World Vision was growing unhappy while waiting for OFAC's assessment. Mark Smith, World Vision's Senior Director of Humanitarian Emergency Affairs, wrote to USAID, stating that the Islamic Relief Agency had performed excellent work for World Vision in the past, and that putting contractual relationships in limbo for such a long period is putting a significant strain on World Vision's relationship with the Sudanese regime. Smith also revealed that World Vision had submitted a notice to OFAC indicating its intention to restart work with ISRA and to transact with ISRA if OFAC did not respond within a week. World Vision's statement stunned USAID officials who complained that World Vision's behavior doesn't make sense. USAID official Daniel Holmberg emailed a colleague, if they actually said that they wanted to resume work with ISRA while knowing that it was 99% likely that ISRA was on the list, then I am concerned about our partnership with them and whether it should continue. On January 23rd, OFAC confirmed that ISRA was a sanctioned entity and denied World Vision a license to engage in transactions with ISRA. Mark Smith and World Vision's country program director in Sudan expressed their disappointment. What are they disappointed in? That they weren't going to be giving money to groups like bin Laden's Al-Qaeda? And this is an evangelistic group? World Vision, this is reason not to give any money to them. That they're receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from the federal government and then giving some of that, incredibly, No sound? Can you guys hear me? Wow. Can you hear me, guys? Wow. Hello? Tell me this is not screwed up. Please tell me. Okay, good. Okay. I'm hearing people can't get into the chat room. Okay. I'm really mind blown that World Vision was in a contractual relationship. This article goes on for a total of 7 pages. It's an outstanding amount of research. I am just mind blown. I don't know what's going on. I'm just mind blown that World Vision could, in some way, give money to a known terrorist financier of bin Laden, the man who was responsible for attacking the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and the coal. We can go on and on in the amount of activities that Al-Qaeda did. But to think that was permissible by some idiot in World Vision, at this point, I can no longer recommend World Vision. I've been hesitant lately, but I will be contacting members of churches. I'll be contacting churches as a result of this article and telling them to discontinue any finances to them because they have taken part in a partnership with terrorism. So we cannot trust that our funds will be appropriately be used. That is how I'm going to deal with this. You have your own choices. Let's talk about something that happened this week with PBS that was noted by the Honest Reporting. I love honestreporting.com. Honestreporting.com, Simon Plosker wrote this topic on July 25th. PBS NewsHour on July 22nd included a small report on an Israeli demonstration in Tel Aviv over gay rights. They called Tel Aviv of Israel. Apparently, they are unaware that President Trump had our embassy moved to the capital, Jerusalem. So PBS, a federally funded agency, is now denying Israel their capital. Time to act, Mr. Trump, President Trump, and say, what can we do to remove your financing if you can't get things right? Please don't make us look like fools. We're going to get into there's an awful lot of stories this week. And what's happened in Canada. I have a ton of stuff about mental illness that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to take my time and get through this. But let's get through the stories for the United States, because this week's stories for the United States, they're overflowing. I haven't seen this many stories on terrorism and counterterrorism in a couple months. Here's one that I do mention. It's on SPLC, PJ Media. I love PJ Media. If you get a chance, go there. You'll want to read this article in its entirety. I will read much of it. Basically, this article by Tyler O'Neill, published July 22nd. SPLC ignored Muslim anti-Semitism, warns about the danger to Muslims from Holocaust denial. Now, the problem, this is evidence that SPLC does no research. You give them money, and they'll declare somebody a hate group. They'll declare a group a hate group. All you have to do is give them money, because they do no research. They still think we're located in Little Falls, New York, and I don't believe any of us is located there, so I'm still trying to figure out where they got the concept. I think it's hilarious. But let's get going here. On Saturday, the left-wing smear organization of the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, attacked the Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg for suggesting that some forms of Holocaust denial could be acceptable on Facebook. Well, we're going to talk about that immediately. Why don't we do that right now? Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg said some forms of Holocaust denial could be acceptable. You want to know what happened today and yesterday? Their stocks went right down. Right down. They're going down 150 billion. They lost 150 billion in a matter of 2 days. Wednesday and Thursday, their stocks have been going straight down. Isn't that wonderful? Now, all the way to today. Even today, they said it went down. Let me just check the figure I was looking at. I think it was 18% they went down today. So they were up. Today they said Facebook's down 150. Yeah, they wiped out nearly 150 billion from Facebook's market cap. That's from the New York Post. What's happened that's caused that? Let's get into that real quick. Saying it's okay to post things on Holocaust denial is probably the number one reason why that's happening. The other thing that they've been doing, they have been saying that it's okay to have Muslim groups that that are anti-Semitic. It's okay to have Muslim groups that are anti-Christian. It's okay to have, but God forbid you do the other thing. God forbid you tell the truth about Sharia. God forbid. And then they're stopping their site from referring to conservative news sites. That is a problem. So what happens is conservatives are going to and using other platforms like MeWe.com. They're going to LinkedIn.com for more professional type stuff. And like me, I only use Facebook to share news stories. That's about it. I tell you now, if you have a choice, don't put any advertising funds in there. Why? Because you're encouraging a man who wants to violate your privacy. You're encouraging a man who thinks it's okay to deny the Holocaust, and this is basically providing a misinformation tool to your children. This is scary. Do I want people to tell my students that it's possible that the Holocaust isn't real? Absolutely not. And then, the sad thing is Facebook is a nice forum. I won't say anything that it isn't. It is a nice forum. But when a person leading this organization has no problem with this, then it becomes a place where, as a Christian, you start to say, I don't know if I can let my children use this. They're pushing hatred. It's anti-Semitic. I have issues with this. I have severe issues with this. Now, I do want to get back to the article I was reading. This SPLC. They at least had the guts to call out Mark Zuckerberg. But I have issues with SPLC because, how about this one? When asked directly about the Holocaust, 61% of, this is in that article by PJ Media, 61% of Muslims aged under 65 said it was a myth or an exaggeration, while Christians were consistently least likely to deny the Holocaust, followed by Buddhists and non-religious people. Hindus also proved surprisingly likely to deny the Holocaust. After preliminary notes about Nazis found the practice pushing the deeply offensive lie that the Holocaust was a fraud concocted by Jews, SPLC noted that it monitors 10 active Holocaust denials groups in the U.S., 4 of which have a minor presence on Facebook. To its credit, the SPLC does have 2 pro-Palestinian groups on that list. 2 chapters of Der Yasin remembered. At the same time, after a brief mention of the resurgence in anti-Semitism online, the SPLC went on to lament the plight of American Muslims, some of whom are spreading Holocaust denial in an effort to slander the state of Israel. Zuckerberg's refusal to address propaganda as hateful is obvious. This just funds are going to stop going. People are going to stop funding groups like this, and it'll give it to ADL. I'm just mind blown that some of this stuff goes on. All you have to do, you want to find out for yourself, Auschwitz is a place you can go visit. I believe Treblinka you can also go visit. And you'll feel the horrors of being there. and this is, it's nothing you can laugh about. You will feel the horror, and that is the sad, sorry truth of that. Let's get into some of the stories that have to be talked about again that happened here this week in the United States. Article comes from the Daily Mail, and I'm going to post today. I can quickly post all this into the chat room because this week, instead of printing things out, unfortunately, like I usually do, which helps me read a little better, I am stuck with online since I ran out of ink. So here we go. This week's article by the Daily Mail. Judge says Pakistan-born terrorist convicted of helping Al-Qaeda can't keep his U.S. citizenship after government tried to take it away over his plot to cut the cables on the Brooklyn Bridge. Well, what do you think? Would it be a good idea to remove his citizenship when he tried to commit a mass murder? What I think. But this judge thinks he's God, and he can make changes where it's just okay. This is, I have to say, it's there is no author to this section. It is by it's given credit to Associated Press. This is what the article says. The government can't strip a terrorist of U.S. citizenship. A federal judge ruled this month in a decision siding with a Pakistan-born man serving the last few years of a 20-year prison sentence. Guys, he's going to be on the street in 2 more years. Do you think he's reformed? Are you ready to have him live next to you? The 20-year sentence for his guilty plea to plotting to destroy New York's Brooklyn Bridge. Case involves Lyman Faris, who was sentenced in 2003 for aiding and abetting Al-Qaeda by scoping out the bridge as part of a plot to cut through cables that support it. His case was among the first and highest profile terrorism cases after the September 11th attacks. Faris met with Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan and worked with September 11 architect KSM. Otherwise, his name is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Although some critics question how realistic the plot was, given post-September 11th security in New York. A court filing last year in U.S. District Court in Southern Illinois argued that Faris lied on immigration papers before becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1999, and that his affiliations demonstrated a lack of commitment to the U.S. Constitution. Makes sense, doesn't it? The U.S. government is, quote, the U.S. government is dedicated to preventing the exploitation of our nation's immigration system by those who would do harm to our country, said Chad Riedler, acting assistant attorney of the Department of Justice's Civil Division. Love this guy. Very intelligent. The government filed in Illinois because Faris was imprisoned there then. He has since been moved to federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. Faris, who is 49, was known as Muhammad Rauf before becoming a U.S. citizen. He worked as a truck driver in Columbus and was married to an American woman for a while. He is scheduled for release December 23, 2020, according to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. Federal Judge Stacey Yonel said this month there's not enough evidence to prove Faris's misrepresentations influenced his decision, the decision to grant him citizenship. American citizenship is precious, and the government carries a heavy burden of proof when attempting to divest a naturalized citizen of his or her citizenship. Attempting to commit an act of terrorism isn't enough? Wow. Maybe you want to live with him, Judge Stacey Yonel. Maybe you want him as your neighbor. I don't. I'm just disgusted. All right, going on. This, like I said, this is a tough week. The news is just too much for the United States this week. I am mind blown that there is this much news this week. Oh, wow. Here's another article. This comes from Jihad Watch. Stanford student And UNHCR intern Hamza Daoud vows to physically fight Zionists on campus. This comes from, again, Jihad Watch. It's written by Robert Spencer, July 22nd. He writes, when I spoke at Stanford last year, there was a great deal of leftist hysteria and fear-mongering in the run-up to the event. A clique of professors actually wrote a warning about Robert Spencer and his Islamophobic incitements to violence. As these liars probably knew, the only real threat of violence was to me and to those students courageous enough to support my appearing on campus. Confirming that now is Stanford student Hamza Daoud, who whined improbably amid the hysteria about my appearance on campus, that he had been questioned about my position at Stanford, my religion. Yeah, sure, Hamza. Everyone knows Stanford is a hotbed of Islamophobia. Anyway, Daoud, who is not surprisingly at the jihad-abetting UNR, United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has now confirmed who the violent thugs really are by vowing to physically fight Zionists on campus and devote his life efforts to abolishing your, quote, petty-ass, ethno-supremacist settler colonial state. Among the uproar over Robert Spencer's appearance at Stanford and the planned disruption of his event by administrators and students, it was noted that in endeavoring to make sure that the few people as possible could hear him, and in relentlessly defaming him in the student press before the event, Stanford administrators and faculty students were behaving like fascists. Let me just read some of the stuff he said. I want you to think about this. Also, Hamza Daoud is a student at Stanford. He is an RA, residential assistant, which means he's going to be in charge of kids. This comes straight from Stanford College Republicans. This is what they wrote. SCR is disgusted by a threat of violence issued by Hamza Daoud, a rising junior at Stanford University, toward pro-Israel students. Daoud, who is an active in Stanford Students for Justice in Palestine, a former ASSU undergraduate senator, and who will be a residential assistant in one of Stanford's dormitories in the 2018-2019 school year, vowed on his personal Facebook page to physically fight Zionists on campus next year. Threatening to assault other students who hold a different point of view is anathema to a free society and any kind of education, let alone the operation of the premier research university of the world. Stanford should take disciplinary action against Mr. Daoud, and SCR demands that Stanford terminate Dowd's position as a residential assistant in the Norcliffe dormitory immediately. Mr. Dowd's statements reveal him to be a danger to the safety of students on Stanford's campus, and such an individual should not ever be put in any position of authority over other students, particularly in a dormitory that includes freshmen. Moreover, while we are disturbed by Hamza Daoud's statements, we find it unsurprising that a member of the Students for Justice of Palestine, an organization with financial ties to terrorist affiliates, would issue a call to violence against pro-Israel students. Wow. And that happened here, people. Harvard University. And who called on it? Who made the who exposed it? The Stanford College Republicans. It's important. They're standing up. I don't understand why people can't stand up. I really don't understand that. It's hard to understand some of these things where people do these things. I don't get it. I mean, I really don't. Why people can't see this stuff. It's at least the college Republicans saw it. Holy cow. I don't understand. Going on. Like I said, there was a lot of American news stories this week. How about this one? This one comes from Creeping Sharia. And I usually take the stories, they usually don't catch stories I miss. So I'm going to say this is a story I somehow missed, and I'm kind of disgusted about this one also. Virginia. Judge vacates terrorism convictions of Muslim who trained with Pakistani Jihad group. This to me is an extremely important article that everyone should be paying attention to. I put the link in the chat room. I don't know what we can do about these judges who are letting terrorists. Judge has overturned a man's conviction on terrorism charges, saying Saifullah Chapman should be released because of a shift on how the law defines violent crime. In 2004, Chapman was sentenced as part of the Virginia Paintball Jihad Network, which used games to train for armed combat. District Judge Leonie M. Brinkema in Eastern Virginia ordered Chapman, a former U.S. Marine, to be freed immediately and to serve 3 years of supervised release. The move dramatically shortened the 65-year prison term he was to serve. On Friday, the judge also rejected federal prosecutors' requests for a stay on the release order. Their request said the government has a strong chance of winning an appeal and that Chapman poses a flight risk and danger to the public. Brinkema denied the motion in a brief notice, saying her reasons had been explained in a phone conference with both legal teams. Chapman, who is 45, had been found guilty of several crimes, from conspiracy to support of a terrorist group to conspiracy to use firearms in connection with a violent crime. The reversal stems from the Supreme Court's ruling in the Dimaya immigration case in April, when the High Court justices said the government's legal definition of violent crime was too vague and could lead to arbitrary enforcement. Chapman had filed a motion to vacate his sentence in 2016, citing a similar case. Brinkema issued the order to free Chapman some 14 years after found him guilty in a 2004 bench trial. After initially imposing an 85-year sentence, Brinkema cut Chapman's term by 20 years at a resentencing hearing in 2005. When Chapman was convicted, Brinkema said two of the most serious charges against him, supporting a terrorist group and violating the Neutrality Act, were categorized as crimes of violence. The designation raises an offense to the level of a felony and can boost the minimum sentences at stake. But the violent crime classification changed in light of the Supreme Court's ruling this past spring, and on Thursday, Brinkema said the current interpretation gives more leeway in viewing the case against Chapman. Brinkema wrote the government had never shown Chapman travel to the front lines or any area of active combat or discharged a firearm in any context other than target practice or otherwise used force against anyone. So through that involvement, Chapman traveled to Pakistan. He trained with the Lashkar-e-Taiba militant group, which was hoping to attack India's interest in Kashmir. Chapman returned to the U.S. September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, but he made contact with some of the people he met in Pakistan. He hosted an LET leader in a visit to Virginia. He also got a video module to put on a drone for that leader. He sold a gun to a co-conspirator. The amount of stuff that goes on and on about this guy. Will this judge be held liable if he commits an act of terrorism? That's what I want to know. Anybody else concerned about that one? That to me is a mind number. How can this happen? How? Next article is from Investigative Project on Terrorism. Now, this article is a mind number also. Let's see if I can put this quickly in the chat room. And I do recommend sharing this if you haven't shared it. As I do all the articles I'm sharing tonight, make sure you please, if you can, share them on your social media sites, through emails. I don't know. I've written about Linda Sarsour before. Her name actually means cockroach, but this is by John Rosamondo. It was published July 23rd. Sisters in Hate. Sarsour and Billow team up in fundraiser. Two of the American Muslim community's most notable anti-Semites recently teamed up for an online fundraiser benefiting the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, the Hamas agency in the United States. This is for CARE San Francisco chapter and a group called Empower Change. So now it's another group we need to watch for, Empower Change. Despite claiming to be advocates of the Palestinian cause, Sarsour and Billow take out extreme positions on Israel, those who support it, and even their own allies who engage in dialogue with pro-Zionist people. The CARE chapter is run by Zahar Billow, who has defended Hamas rocket attacks against Israel, whose chapter's website posted a graphic telling Muslims to build a wall of resistance to the FBI. Empower Change founder Linda Sarsour's famously tweeted, "Nothing is creepier than Zionism, the idea of a homeland for Jews." They are listed as co-sponsors of last month's Stand with Muslims to declare no Muslim ban ever fundraiser that launched the day the U.S. Supreme Court upheld President Trump's travel ban. Empower Change, launched by Sarsour in 2015, is an online effort to organize the Muslim community modeled on MoveOn.org. Billow claimed that as of July 13, $44,121 of the $50,000 goal had been raised. Sarsour also embraced deported Popular Front of the Liberation of Palestine (PFLP) terrorist Razmi Oda. Oda was a principal plotter in a 1969 Jerusalem grocery store bombing that killed 2 college students. Yet Sarsour gushed that she felt honored and privileged to be with her on stage. Bill also is comfortable dismissing terrorist attacks if the target is Israel. Quote, "Blaming Hamas for firing rockets at apartheid Israel is like blaming a woman for punching her rapist." That's disgusting. This stuff makes me angry. I'm sorry. The concept of saying some of these things just makes me angry. This is why, we should be continually exposing the racist. This is racism of these people. It should be continually exposed. People go to, I can't think of the Canary site right now. Canary Mission. I think it's canarymission.org. Go there. You're going to see a lot more stuff. It's just mind-numbing. How about this one? This is a little bit more than a week ago, but I only saw it a couple days ago. This is again from California. This is by Nicholas Iovino. It was published July 18th in the courthousenews.com. Courthouse News. This is by the Courthouse News Service from San Francisco, California. A 23-year-old man bragged about plotting terror attacks in the Bay Area, pled guilty to terrorism-related charges on Wednesday. In conversation with undercover FBI agents, Oakland resident Amr Sinan al-Hagagi boasted of plans to bomb gay nightclubs, set fire to hills near Berkeley, give homeless people backpacks full of explosives, and distribute rat poison-laced cocaine. But his lawyer said those were merely the words of a naive young man who never intended to follow through. This is a young guy who was immature and said some stupid things, attorney Mary McNamara told reporters outside the federal courthouse after a client entered his guilty plea. Al-Hagagi pled guilty to attempting to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization and 3 identity theft charges. Dozens of friends and members of Oakland's Yemeni community attended the court hearing Wednesday. Al-Hagagi, a U.S. native whose parents immigrated from Yemen, appeared in a red Alameda County Jail jumpsuit, supporting a thin goatee and dark hair down to his biceps. He answered the judge's questions respectfully and in a soft-spoken manner. One family friend, Abdul Muhammad of Oakland, said he doesn't believe Al-Haggagi was ever serious about causing harm to others, and that the government just wanted to make an example of him. Al-Haggagi's lawyer argued that the client deserves a lighter sentence because the only action he took involved opening a few social media accounts for an ISIS sympathizer. Oh, it's okay. He just opened an account. Freaky, scary. Federal prosecutor Eswakar Hasib said Al-Haggagi was communicating with a full-fledged member of ISIS, not a mere sympathizer. But according to McNamara, the person her client communicated was a 16-year-old student in Iraq who identified himself as a sympathizer. Let's see. He's in Iraq. Who's there? Could it be ISIS? Whoa. Come on. How stupid do you think we are? This lawyer is playing on the stupidity and ignorance of people who don't stay informed? It's pretty scary. Wow. He faces a maximum of 47 years in prison and $1 million in fines. I'm all for it. Wow. Again, I said there was a ton of news stories for the U.S. There is one more. This one, we talk about faked Islamophobia. Fox News caught one of them. This article is by Michael Bartiromo. Now, I'm going to put this article in there, and this is a laugh. You know, if you want a good laugh article, this is probably the closest I'm going to get to a good laugh. Article. And I have to. Okay. This is written by, again, Michael Bartiromo, waiter who faked racist receipt, the latest to use shocking claims to get Facebook love. Scary. Things he wanted to get Facebook love by lying through his teeth, claiming Islamophobia. You can't believe everything you read, especially if it's scrawled across a restaurant receipt. A waiter at Saltgrass Steak House in Odessa, Texas, confirmed Monday that he made up a story about one of the restaurant's patrons leaving him a racist receipt. I did write it, Cahill Cavill, 20, told the Odessa American of the note on the receipt, which read, "We don't tip terrorists." I don't have an explanation, Cavill said. I made a mistake. There is no excuse for what I did. Cavill originally shared a photo of the receipt to Facebook earlier this month, claiming that a customer wrote the message and refused to leave a gratuity. He further claimed that the patron circled his first name, Khalil, which had been printed at the top of the receipt. At the moment, I did not know what to think or what to say. He said I was sick to my stomach, the 20-year-old had written. But the first waiter to make a fake handwritten message to get some Facebook love. Diana Morales served at New Jersey restaurant. A former Marine made news in 2013 after alleging a customer wrote, "Sorry, I cannot tip because I do not agree with your lifestyle." I mean, this stuff is ridiculous. Facebook love. If you can't get love in real life, too bad for you. But, you know, I'm into the truth. I think that's far more important. Now let's go to Canada. Let's talk about this terrorist action that happened up there and the truth behind it. I'm really concerned that people are not seeing the lies in this story about this man being mentally ill. Now, why can I say that? My specialty is I'm a special ed teacher on the side. And guess what? I have experience with the term with mental illness. I have experience working with people who are mentally ill. I can tell you right now that there are several problems with this story. So let me read I'm going to read two articles, and then I'm going to lose it. These both come from the Toronto Sun. And I will say this, of all the insanity that is out there, it's possible the Toronto Sun is the only one telling the truth on this issue. Why am I saying that? So let's talk about Anthony Furey's article, Meet the Spin Doctor Behind the Hussein Family Statement. Now, you may not have known this, but this article is outstanding. So let me put this in. This is an absolute, if this article says everything you want to know about this spin. Oh, that's the last article. I apparently didn't put it up. Okay, I thought I did. Come on. Okay, here's the new article. Okay, now wait till you hear this. Again, this is by Anthony Furey. It was published July 25th in the Toronto Sun. The man who presented himself as the point of contact for the family of Faiz al-Hussein is a professional activist who has reportedly committed himself to, quote, framing a new narrative of Muslims in Canada and creating a, quote, national political movement. Shortly after Ontario Special Investigations Unit revealed the identity of the Danforth shooter as 29-year-old Faiz al-Hussein, a news release was sent out to select media attributed to the Hussein family. Now, again, attributed to the Hussein family. Who sent this out? According to Furey, this is where things get interesting. The polished statement began with the family's deepest condolences to the families who are now suffering on account of our son's horrific actions. Then went on to explain that, quote, our son had severe mental health challenges, struggles with psychosis and depression his entire life. Here's the statement from the family. We are at a terrible loss for words, but we must speak out to express our deepest condolences to the family who are now suffering on account of our son's horrific actions. Well, they got that part right. Our son's horrific actions. We are utterly devastated, it continues, by the incomprehensible news that our son was responsible for the senseless violence and loss of life that took place on the Danforth. Again, they got another part right. Our son had severe mental health challenges, struggling with psychosis and depression his entire life. The interventions of professionals were unsuccessful. Medications and therapies were unable to treat him. While we did our best to seek help for him throughout his life of struggle and pain, we could never imagine that this would be his devastating and destructive end. Our hearts are in pieces for the victims and for our city as well as we come to grips with this terrible tragedy. Now, with this said, let's talk about who wrote this. This was provided by Mohammed Hashim, a full-time organizer for the Toronto and York Legion Labor Council. Social media accounts belonging to Hashim show him heavily involved in supporting NDP candidates both federally and provincially in Ontario. He's also described as the driving force behind the National Council of Canadian Muslims. What was their name before? CARE CAN. Oh, this is Hamas representative. Hamas is defending this man. Oh, he's mentally ill. Wow. His bio continues. His workshop, Progressive Organizing in the Muslim Communities, will demonstrate how the GTA Muslims community mobilizes in the previous federal election and led the groundwork to start building a national political movement. Another bio from the 2017 Muslim Awards of Excellence continues this description of Hashim as something of a spin doctor, noting that his talking points and media advocacy are changing how Muslims are seen in the Canadian identity. So if you're Muslim and Canadian and you commit an act of terrorism, you have been mentally ill. So I'm going to cut this article right here, and I'm going to switch over to Tariq Fatah's article. Tariq Fatah is a socialist who has Muslim leanings. Could he be considered a true Muslim today? Probably not by other Muslims, but he is extremely important in what he shares, especially in Canada. Now, I've met him. I've talked with him briefly. I will say that he is a very interesting person. Listen to what he says on this. His article was also published on the 25th. He wrote, "Mentally ill? The media or the murderer?" I couldn't have put it any better myself. Here's what Fatah writes. "No sooner was it revealed that the Toronto mass murderer was a 29-year-old Muslim or of Pakistani descent, consultants and experts lined up on various TV networks, twisting themselves into halal pretzels, trying to avoid the elephant in the room staring at them. A Muslim hate crime." Within hours, CBC News obtained an unsigned letter purportedly from the killer's family, stating the mass shooter, Faisal Hussein, had a lifelong struggle with, quote, severe mental health challenges, including psychosis and depression. Thus, the subject on the evening news became one of lack of funding of mental health and gun crime, painting the murderer himself as a victim, and not even a hint of anger at the man who had declared war on a Toronto street of partygoers, killing two girls, 18 and 10. Never once did a single participant have the courage to raise the possibility of the killer being inspired by jihadi teachings that portray partying on streets by women as evil and satanic. Response to the hours of political correctness came from an Australian Islamic cleric, Imam Mohammed Tawhidi, who has been to Canada and is familiar with the Islamist networks in the country. He tweeted, "If you think all these jihadi terrorists kill because they have mental illness, then perhaps you are the ones with mental illness. It's not mental illness. It's their allegiance." Also upset at the endless hours of banality on TV was Ansaf Haider, the Canadian wife of Saudi-held prisoner of conscience, Raif Badawi. She tweeted, "Politically correct reporters keep saying murderer Faisal Hassan suffered mental illness, which Islamic terrorist was not mentally ill. These jihadis hate women, and Faisal aimed at and shot the woman. He's a jihadi, no doubt about it. Shame on CBC News for covering up the truth," unquote. It was not the Toronto Sun's Joe's Warmington. Much of what we know would have remained concealed. Warmington reported that his law enforcement sources confirm investigators are looking at every avenue, including a potential jihadi-inspired mission. This was the first time the word jihad appeared in the media, where a Toronto Star investigative reporter went as far as to blame all men for the crime. Kenyon Wallace wrote, "Why many are inevitably asking, would someone do such a thing?" Then answering his own question, Wallace determined, in truth, we may never know. He then went on to conclude Hussein also shared a characteristic in common with many mass murderers, one that has received particular attention in the wake of a string of explicitly misogynistic attacks. He was male. However, another male was digging for the truth as facts, not a discourse in gender studies that would diminish bin Laden, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban responsibility for crimes against humanity and share it with all us males as their partners in crime. In the meantime, Warmington reports that files being reviewed by the police include concern Hussein expressed support for a website that was pro-ISIS and his visit to Pakistan, Afghanistan. There are questions that remain unanswered, like which mosque Hussein attended, who scrubbed his social media presence, and how it was that his name was withheld until the family issued their polished statement. Let's talk about this family problem. Let's talk about their statement. The neighbors have stated that this was a child they always saw smiling. If you're familiar with the term depression, persons diagnosed with depression in general, I'd say the vast majority have difficulty smiling. I have students diagnosed with depression. I was personally diagnosed with depression, and I'll tell you, smiling is not something you do easy when you're diagnosed with depression. It is something you fight to do on your own. Some of the people who are some of us who are diagnosed with depression need assistance to do that, and it's important you get that if you can't do it on your own, because I don't think you can understand how awful it is to live without being able to smile. But this kid could smile on his own. There's no discussion also at all of this kid having been mental hygiene arrested. If they believed he was a danger at any one point in their lives, there will be, at least, and then there would have been already, I would say, a released record of his juvenile record, which should have multiple mental hygiene arrests by his family. So why do people get mental hygiene arrested by family? For the safety of the rest of the family. If they're a danger to themselves and others, how do you sleep at night? This is extremely important, people, to discuss this. Why? Because this is all a freaking lie. It's a lie to say that this man was mentally ill. This just ticked me off. I'm sorry, it ticks me off. This is the stuff that everyone should recognize as a lie. It's not hard to see. Can you imagine not arresting, not protecting the rest of your family? Could you do that? Not protecting the rest of your family. That's what this family apparently did. They didn't find it important to protect the rest of the family. So, claiming it was just a claim, that just pisses me off. They're not telling you the entire truth. They're not even telling you a portion of the truth when they claim he's mentally ill. Unless they can come out, unless the Canadian Toronto police come out with stuff that show that this kid was arrested multiple times, and something like we're talking about here is mental hygiene arrests, this is a scam. And who created the scam? CARE-CAN, otherwise known today in Canada as NCCM. Stuff that pisses me off. Sorry, guys. I do not like people being lied to. I do not like the press being the one to tell the lies. I want to be able to trust the press. I want that, but I can't do that anymore. Thanks to Mark Zuckerberg and his friends at CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all these alphabet soup lying networks for jihad. It's scary. I'm hoping Fox News will be more daring and fight to get this truth out. But I haven't seen anybody fighting this issue. I fight the concept of radicalization that's being taught, and I'm hoping to write something on that in the near future. So that's my other pet peeve that I hope to be exposing in the near future. So let's go on from here. Going to England, and I have to admit this article makes me angry also. Anytime we're talking about kids being molested, being put in danger, I get upset. This article, as you'll see when I put it into the chat room, if you go to the link. Well, Summer writes in the chat room that he would have been in a 72-hour observation at a hospital if he had issues at some point. Well, some of those rules depend on the states that you're in. 72 hours is usually for adults. Whether they are, when they're kids, in New York State, here's what they'll do. Your child gets arrested. They go to the ER. Psych eval, done. And I mean quick. And they're immediately asking the family, do you feel comfortable taking him home or her home? They would rather see that child go home. Yet the child has been arrested for mental hygiene. That's the first thing they do. It's a hard thing to go through. I've done this as a parent. I can't express how much this concept of claiming mental illness, how much it upsets me, because I've personal experience dealing with this. It just angers me to claim it when what they really believe in jihad is expressed in Sharia. It's written multiple times in the Quran. It's written multiple times in the Hadith. It's written multiple times in the Siras. Why don't they just wake up and accept what they're saying? Now, this next article, is on the Islamic school. This is from Daily Mail. It's by Andy Dolan. This is on an Islamic school run from a home of a rapist. An owner attacked a girl who was 16, but for some reason, England can't prevent this wife teaching primary students in their front room. So you bring children to the house of a rapist to teach them. Is the wife now complicit in a crime if her husband rapes them? That's my question. So let's get into the article. The home of a convicted rapist is being used as an unregulated Islamic school for children. Ghulam Hadir's wife is teaching around 17 children of primary school age at the madrasa that she runs from their front room during the weekends. Former taxi driver Hadir, 61, was jailed for 6 years in 2006 after a court heard he brutally raped a 16-year-old at a derelict churchyard. The madrasa highlights a safeguarding loophole around children attending out-of-school education centers, which require no monitoring from education watchdog Ofsted or local authorities. There is also no requirement for Hadir's wife, Sadiqa, who teaches classes in their front room, to submit to disclosure and barring service checks. The checks would flag up Hadir's conviction and are intended to prevent unsuitable people from working with vulnerable groups, including children. Ofsted described the madrasa run from Hadir's semi-detached home in Acox Green, Birmingham, as deeply worrying. The watchdog head, Amanda Spielman, has previously warned that Islamic hardliners are preaching extreme doctrines in underground schools across the UK. Her predecessor, Sir Michael Wilshaw, said, "I raised this issue time and time again when I was at Ofsted. Unregistered schools, by their very nature, are outside of the law, and I was concerned that they were increasing in number, particularly in cities like Birmingham. The government needs to think about how both schools outside of mainstream education madrasas such as this need to be properly regulated and inspected." Birmingham City Council said the situation was nothing short of appalling, and that the case highlighted the need for an overhaul of regulations. Last Saturday, the Mail watched as 17 boys and girls were dropped off at Haider's home for a 2-hour session learning the Quran. Only 2 of their parents said they were aware of Haider's past. One father, angry that he had not been told, confronted Mrs. Haider, 50, and vowed never to send his daughter back to the lessons. The father, who would only give his first name, Hussein, said, "I'm shocked. I know the teacher, Sadiqa. She is a good lady, and I see him sometimes at the house." Another father, who paid $25 a month for his son to attend on Saturdays and Sundays, admitted he knew about Haider's conviction and was concerned about it. Again, he's sending his son, not his daughter. He said, "When my son comes home, he does get questioned. I ask him what the mom is saying and whether the husband is around. I just hope he's a changed man." Other parents seemed unconcerned when informed of Haider's past. Some said they didn't even know who was teaching their child. One mother said, "We were recommended to the madrasa by people we know. We call the teacher's sister." Some of the parents said the lessons were free because they knew the family. There was no sign of Haider, who is understood to work at a dairy, when male reporters were watching, but he was seen coming and going in a silver Kia car on another occasion. Haider was 49 when he was found guilty of indecent assault and rape and put on the sex offender list for life. When approached last Saturday, his wife said her husband was at work and claimed his victims had made up their allegations. She said, "This is not a proper madrasa. All the children are in my neighborhood," and things like that. She said the conviction was not right. He didn't do it. So, this man was convicted. He's still claiming he didn't do anything. And it's okay to have a school in their home because they're only going on, it's not monitored. And I get that concept. But is there no concept of having to stay away from children for him? Is there nothing that has to be done to share that he lives there? Wow. I don't know what the UK can do. I mean, I get that some schools they're starting them up, and they can't stop that. But shouldn't there be a reason to close them as unsafe to the public? Going on. This next article. Wow. Again, there's an awful lot this week. Let's see if I get to this next one. Okay. Stay with this topic, and I'm going to go. Here's another article. I'm going to get to this next. I'm going to share in this next article. Here is. Let me just go one more article here that I have actually printed before the printer died today. This came from Voice of Europe. This is from Sweden. Very low sentences for African migrants after bloody gang rape of a 13-year-old girl in Sweden. This is published July 23rd in Voice of Europe. Three African film and share on social media that their prolonged bloody group of violence of a 13-year-old girl in Västras Friacheter reported. But now the Court of Appeals chose to nearly halve their punishment from 8 months to 4 or 5 months of youth detention. A fourth rapist cannot be punished because he is said to be a child. But now the Court of Appeals chooses to nearly halve their. Okay. On June 14, 2017, a 13-year-old girl was raped in a flat in Västerås. The three Somalis, reportedly born in 2000, were each sentenced in April for rape against a child to 8 months of youth detention. The judgment was appealed, and the prosecutor demanded the perpetrator be punished. Instead, Sve Vorat has chosen to severely lower their penalty and furthermore released one of the Somalis from the charge of child pornography, as it is unclear from the video if the girl had completed puberty. 2 are now sentenced to 5 months in juvenile detention, with the third released having served only 4 months. The Africans plied the young girl with alcohol. Then one of the men brought her into the toilet, raping her. After she left the toilet, 3 of the men brought her back and raped her at the same time. This led to the girls. I just can't continue. This is what's going on when you let these animals out after a short time. Are you saying this is okay? I don't understand. I can't. Let's talk about France. There's a couple articles I have on France, but we'll see what we get to. The article I did miss from England. I am not going to reread all of it. There's just too much news today. How about this one from the Daily Mail, also from the UK, before I get into this article, this other article in France. France has, UK has a new problem in crime. A new crime that they'll probably have to write a law about. Because we write laws to stop things from happening. This new crime that is happening in the UK. Acid throwing. Acid attacks. This article is by Martin Robinson, the chief reporter, and Joe Middleton and Jim Norton. In the Daily Mail, an Afghan mother was attacked. Her child was age 3, was burned with acid. The mother somehow missed the acid and it hit her child. Acid permanently disfigures. Again, I said this is hard. A 3-year-old was damaged. The father of the 3-year-old boy, doused in acid while shopping with his mother, has been arrested and is being questioned over the attack. The 39-year-old suspect, an Afghan asylum seeker, notice they did not say he had been accepted. Deport. That's the only answer for this man. Get him out of your country. Put him on a watch list. That if he's seen again, that he won't be allowed to enter. England, the UK is an island. Block his presence from your country. 39-year-old suspect, Afghan asylum seeker who has not been named, was the first suspect detectives held after the boy was targeted while sitting in a pushchair during a shopping trip to Home Bargains with his mother. That sounds like a shopping cart or a stroller is what we would call a stroller. 3 other younger men are also being grilled in connection with a Saturday or afternoon's horrific attack in Worcester after they were arrested 130 miles away in Walthamstow. They are reportedly Eastern Europeans from Romani community and accomplished bare-knuckle fighters, their East London neighbors said. Today, a 5th man, 41, of Wolverhampton, was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit grievous bodily harm. It is now thought the target might have been the boy's mother. The couple had initially settled in Wolverhampton after fleeing war-torn Afghanistan 11 years ago. Last year, she left her husband, a taxi driver, and moved to a house in Worcester with their 3 children, now aged 10, 8, and 3, to start a new life. A neighbor recalled shouting matches between the couple, while another said when the woman left, her husband broke down in tears, claiming she would not let him see the children. It is believed the thugs who carried out the acid attack on the boy had been monitoring the family after tracking them down to the new semi-detached home. Detectives have been questioning residents about sightings of suspicious people and vehicles in the area. When the pair were in a relationship, she would wear a full veil, but in recent years had removed it and moved to an address in Worcester, 30 miles away with the children. A West Mercia police source confirmed to Mail Online that the older detainee is the victim's father from Wolverhampton. She said today he is still in custody. No charges have yet been brought. This is an ongoing investigation. As article goes on, the fact that England now has to deal with Islamic crimes such as throwing acid in people's faces should tell them it's time to say no more. But they won't do it. They don't realize they're in the middle of a hijra for the purpose of taking them over. They can't on their own. Scary, scary, scary. And the news goes on and on and on, and I'm nowhere near getting close to what the amount of stories we have. But let me not forget to share, to say thank you to those people who are in the chat room tonight. We got Bigfoot, Eric Kaffer, Gary Comfort, oh, wow. Kel Fritzy and Summer 7. It's just been a news-filled night. There's just so much tonight, and I thought we were going to have a guest, and I'm kind of glad because some of these news stories just needed to be told. Let me say that you do want to pay attention to the other shows on Global Patriot Radio. Tomorrow morning we have Carl Goldberg and the Logic of Islam. Saturday night we have Usama Dakdak, and he's an evangelist, and he'll tell you the truth about what Islam really teaches versus what the Bible teaches. Talk to Erica Kafiristan and come and listen to his show on Sunday. You will be mind blown because he gives you the truth in a simple way, so it's easy to understand. He's going to direct you to good sources. So definitely tune in on Sunday also. Monday we have Alan Vito, the real radio man of the network. Please come in and listen to them. You'll be surprised. And then there's Cal Fritzy. Come back with Infidels Are Watching. You should listen to her on Infidels Are Watching. And Wednesday we have a forum show. We're hoping someday to fill that with a new guest, with a new host. And you come back next Thursday, and I will be here, hopefully with a new guest. I have a couple possibles, so we'll wait and see. I have a few more stories, and I have like 10 more stories I haven't even touched. It's just like I said, there's too much this week. There is an article with Gatestone Institute I want to recommend to everybody. It's called A Month of Multiculturalism in France, and it's only talking about the month of June 2018. Go look at that. It's multiple pages listing many of the dangers and many of the awful things that have happened in the country of France. Go look at that. I'm going to skip to a couple of articles that I think are all important. There was a Jewish man attacked in Paris by an assailant shouting about Allah and Hitler. But, of course, he's got to be mentally ill because he shouted about Hitler and Allah. Nobody's recognizing the fact Hitler used Muslims. Nobody's talking about that. They just say he's mentally ill because he attacked an old man and they put him in. Actually, what happened was they transferred him to a psychiatric institution for overexcitement. Maybe, was it a bloodlust? Is that why they put him there? Was he experiencing bloodlust? This stuff is scary, people. Sad and sick at the same time. But they don't get it. Jihad and bloodlust are historical Muslim activities recorded in their histories. their histories. Here's another one. Trying to think which ones were more important because we're running out of time. There are 3 stories I'm looking at now that I'll just talk about. Germany, a Muslim migrant murdered his 7-year-old daughter. And I'm just going to put these links in the chat room. And I'm probably not going to I can't do them all. There's just, like I said, there's so many news stories this week. It's mind-numbing. Now, this again, I talk about this now constantly, and a Muslim female's honor is not her own. It is owned by her family. This is important to understand. It's an important concept. So you understand that these women have no rights to their own honor. And again, there was an attack in Germany this week. A German Lübeck bus attack. A knife man injured 14 victims. Being a smoking backpack. How many people are running out of the bus when you see a smoking backpack carried by a Muslim? Are you running? Because I know I am. I'm not sticking around. Wow. I'm just mind numb that this stuff is happening. It's freaky scary. I don't know what to tell you guys, because when you see this stuff happening over and over again, what do? I'm just mind numbed. Why we allow this to continue to happen over and over and over again. Why doesn't Germany stand up? Why don't they toss Merkel out to protect their own people? And the stuff that's happening here and in Canada, well, they aren't really violent. Well, they're practicing war games to kill us with paintball guns, yet that's not violent. How about this one? If you want to talk about women's rights, I'm for equal rights. I am for that. India, one of the leaders of a Muslim group there, said triple talaq prevents Muslim men from murdering their wives. So it's a good thing. So triple talaq, what is that? Where a Muslim man can say talaq, talaq, talaq. I mean, he's talking about divorce. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. He says it 3 times, and he's divorced. And he says that protects the Muslim men from killing their wives because they were cheating. That's why it's said. The stuff that happens, it's freaky mind-numbing. So my suggestion, you need to follow me on Facebook, on Twitter, or on LinkedIn. Send me a note if you're trying to connect with me on Facebook, because I look at how many connections you have. If you don't have a direct connection to me already, I may not hook up with you. On LinkedIn, do the same thing. Send me just a little note. I'm very cautious with who I connect with now. I'm up to 9,000 followers, over 9,000 followers on LinkedIn. I haven't caught how many I have on Facebook. Become one who shares what I put out. Why? Because the broader we get this reach of information that's happening, of news that's happening every day, the better we are at getting the truth out. The better we are at informing the masses of people. It's that important today, people, because the regular media isn't telling the truth. I want to say thank you for listening. It's been a very, very informative show, and I just want to thank God bless you for being here, spending the time to be woken up. And I just want to say thank you again.